Send it. Let's see if Twitter is up here. Can't say that. Yep. We'll even try this Astral one. I don't know if it'll send or not. Fucking Noster, man.
Back in Noster.
I wouldn't.
They were doing.
I don't know how people are even using it, to be honest.
Well, that's but from what you've told me, that's what's really kept me from wanting to like participate in it. To be honest.
Yeah. There's no.
Oh, by the way, driving here, I'm in 6:52, so and I get it's State of Origin night, but it's they had a RBT all the way up the road just here before to get to here. Yeah, I was like, damn.
It's been a long time since I've seen an RBT.
Yeah, ages.
Yeah, must be because of Origin. What is it? Is that the first game or what?
Second game.
Second.
I've forgotten every single time that the game's on. I'm like, this year, I'm like, man, I just don't know. I don't remember. I mean, for you, for sure.
Obviously.
But for me, I was just being like, oh, dude, I just forget.
Alright. So we might be live now. I'm gonna have to check in and see if
check as well.
See if this is correct. Been listening to the Jimmy Wales Flex. It's been pretty good. Yeah. All right. Yeah, I can hear us. That sounds pretty good.
Right there.
I think I'm tucked in enough as well. Yeah. Beautiful. But yeah, it was good to get that that value for value one done. So now next steps for that for me are I need to talk to Blueberry about trying to get it live. I actually think that I can use the live tag with them. Well, I should be able to, because that's why I joined the Blueberry. But technically, it'll probably require a little bit of work on my part. Because you have to do like Castbox servers to be able to get your audio to go into this place to link to this.
So work.
Yeah, so I'll have to do a bit of learning in this next week to do that.
That's what Lives is about.
Got a book
a little bit of learning
for tomorrow done. You think you'll have one for next week or the week after? What do you reckon?
Next week.
Next week?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's already been exported, so all I've got to do is just schedule it.
Oh, okay.
So
cool. Yeah.
Do it fine.
Next week. Yeah. Sweet.
Just schedule it in.
Yeah, there's a couple other things I'll tell you off air about that.
Yeah, I've got a couple of other things to tell you off air too.
But yeah.
Bore people here of companies.
Yeah. Okay. Life's other than that, life's been pretty good, man. I did some cleaning today. Vacuum.
Cleaning.
Yeah.
Oh.
Better be appreciating these nice clean floors in here.
Well, I'm feeling it. I've got my shoes off, so I'm feeling it quite nice.
I've
been, you wouldn't recognize this, but it's always when it's in my own home. Like not when it's in other homes, but I would say it's not daily. I reckon I vacuum three times a week. I vacuum 3 times a week.
What?
Yep.
Why?
Yeah, you can confirm this with my partner.
Why would you do that?
3 times a week.
Why?
Well, mainly
it's
dog.
Easy.
Well,
you got a
dog, baby. So shit's everywhere. We're painting the house as well.
Okay.
So there's a few things going on at home. However, I've got the cordless Dyson, so it's literally just pick up and go, nice and easy. Like when I say I vacuum, dude, it takes like 5 minutes.
Okay.
So
yeah. Well, what Juan means
difficult.
is he doesn't go over the same spot, because when you vacuum, you kind of should be going over the same spot.
Yeah.
There should be a little bit of overlap.
No. This is one of those where it's maybe at best two swipes of it. I've got it on boost mode.
Oh, lordy.
It's got boost mode in it, by the way, folks.
3 of Juan's vacuums will equal about a half a normal vacuum.
Yeah, exactly. So so that's why it's like doing 3 a week is 1 full vacuum in a week.
Yeah, true. Yeah, no, I fixed the stairs. Well, when I say I fixed the stairs, Prentice came and fixed the stairs finally. So you never got to that was probably your first time right then, just experiencing
fix stairs.
Stairs which
don't turn into slides.
Yeah,
correct.
Good. Okay.
Correct. Very nice. Thank you
very
much, Pete.
I still wouldn't jump
You wouldn't
on the
trust
edge of it. Yeah, I wouldn't. So don't stomp down on them when you're going down one.
Yeah, there's folks for the YouTube. Beautiful.
Nice. I was expecting just Coke to go all over the microphone. Was it a vanilla Coke? There you go. Nice.
Vanilla, zero sugar.
There you go. remember when vanilla Coke first came out. It was life changing.
Oh man, so I'm planning. I think I am planning once I finish this 12-week phase of training and start kind of the new one, that I might just do a podcast as like a weekly kind of fitness one where I just basically just run through the weekly training that I've done and maybe add a little bit of extra comments and whatnot. And so as part of that, I also want to showcase the fact that sometimes, dude, I just eat like shit, like so shit. So today, to give you an example, woke up at 3 a.m.
Okay.
No food. Had a coffee. Had some, like a bit of a mixture of, I guess, greens and reds and beta-alanine and stuff like that. So maybe that's some good stuff. Went and worked out, walked to the office. Didn't have any food until about 10 a.m., which included 2 chocolate croissants and a liquid coffee.
Double chocolate. Nice.
Then I had a protein shake at about midday. Then I had my only meal that I would consider kind of healthy, which is barramundi with some ginger and rice and a single broccoli floret, a single one, just the one. They called it with vegetables. One broccoli floret. Then I didn't eat anything else for a while. I had another black coffee. I then had a can of V, had pork rind, and then I had a 6-inch Subway and another Coke. So sometimes, folks, I am definitely not the healthiest.
Yeah, that doesn't sound too good.
No, definitely not a good day on one. Because I haven't been preparing meals as much at home, so it'll get better. It'll get better.
Well, guess what? I'm converting people to the religion of intermittent fasting because Prentice has started to do some. My brother.
Okay.
He was saying he went a full day or like basically a Chiron level. Didn't eat until dinner.
Okay,
like,
very good.
This guy.
Cheap bastards. Fucking hell.
Yeah, that's the only reason I do it.
Jesus. Keeping the costs low.
Keep those costs low. Add some sawdust into it just to get me by.
Just to... Karen reads some Fyodor Dostoevsky and just has to like live it in reality. Haha.
Got to live the actual book.
What would it be like if I was in the gulags?
Speaking of, I should grab this book as a note, as a little prop.
This is going to be a good conversation, folks.
It's not a full one, but yeah, here we go.
Get ready for this contentious conversation. Cause I'm gonna,
contentious.
Yep.
Oh shit.
It's going to be contentious.
I didn't think it would be that, but all right. Here we go. Cool. All right. Let's.
You got this one?
Yeah, I'll do the kickoff. I'll wait the extra couple of seconds until it's. But I think this is one of the first times we're actually going to kick off right at 7.
Damn.
It's glorious. Amazing it is.
Also, I had a little running.
Not Juan's telling a story. We will not be kicking off. So.
Well, it was a very quick one. Every fortnight we do a running group at work. Today I was meeting someone who I'd met before, but we started talking a little bit more into the background. Now this person works in basically accounting, let's just say, data and accounting. But her background, which was just wild, and I love meeting people like this, was an astrophysicist who had studied, like her thesis was on peculiar movement of candle flames, which actually, it wasn't like candle movement, and candle actually means 2 neutrino stars spiraling together, and the difference between siren spins, which is 2 black holes, and all this sort of stuff. And I was like, damn, this is so interesting. So it's very good to find interesting people like that in the world.
Yeah, definitely. All right, it's 7 minutes.
So
let's do it.
7 a.m.
Let's go. Welcome, mere mortals. Welcome, mere mortalites, to another episode of the Mere Mortals. Oh, what's that? Indeed, we're talking about censoring today. We've been a little censored right at the start there. So you've
Sounds
got
like Spotify.
Yeah, you've got one of your favorite hosts here, Chiron, on the other side.
You got Juan on the other side.
And it is Wednesday, 22nd of June, 7 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time.
It's definitely not the 22nd of June. It's the 21st of June.
I said 21st, didn't I?
I said 22nd.
Oh, my bad.
Censored.
Yeah.
We'll mute that out,
well,
folks.
this is why we need fact checkers, indeed. So there's a live episode where we go on a particular theme. One of us chooses it, and we dive deeper into it. So I chose censorship today.
I think this is going to be a juicy one. It's going to be an interesting one.
Okay, juicy. Yeah.
I want to see where you come from it. I didn't think it was going to be juicy, but then as I started unraveling and asking some questions, and I think this was one of the
conspiracy theories.
This was one of the first ones in a while where I thought originally the idea was going to be kind of mundane. It'll probably just be a bit of a conversation.
Yeah.
But then I went a level deeper in some of my thinking and asking people, and I've uncovered some ideas of my own that I went, whoa, truths. I've got meta within it. So nice. Get ready for that.
Nice. Well, why did I bring this up? I'm trying to think of what actually sparked this up. I suppose it was a couple of things. One was hearing Apple telling the app Damus, which uses Noster. We were talking about that just before we started. And they were saying, no, you can't do likes, you can't do zaps on there, which is very much similar to what's going on with a lot of the podcasting apps. You can do comments and, like things, which sends 10 Satoshis, small stuff. And I was like, oh, okay, this could actually impact something I care about, not something that I've tried to use and is very hard to use. And I think just a couple of books were also circling around this issue. One I've got here for me, Merchants of Doubt, How a Handful of Scientists Obscured the Truth on Issues from Tobacco Smoke to Climate Change, book review coming out of that very, very soon. And yeah, it was just getting me onto the ideas of like, okay, censorship, who is... I suppose that's it. That was my main reasoning for it. So yeah, I want to start off with maybe, what's the point of it? What do you think the point of censorship is?
That's interesting.
So
what did you come upon?
So mine was, it's supposedly protection, right? You never hear someone saying, I'm censoring this because I'm in a position of power and I just don't like what they're saying. It's always comes from this idea of we're doing it to protect the public good. You know, the public, they can't hear about this. This is we're not going to talk about, let's just do something controversial right at the start. We're not going to talk about whether masks are effective or whether we have a not or enough right at the start, because we don't want people to go out and mass buy them. So we're going to say they're not that effective. And then when we've got enough stockpiled, then we say, oh yeah, by the way, you should probably be wearing a mask.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like for the public good, we're censoring things. We're not going to say certain things because it's for the betterment of other people. So you never hear about it talking about to maintain power or wealth or status.
Although I would say that it can apply in that manner.
What's that?
And maybe this is, I mean, we didn't get into the definition of censorship, but let's just talk, say, pre-World War II, Nazi Germany, 1933 onwards, there was propaganda to empower that movement towards Nazi and the World War II that sort of, initiated. Would you call that censorship of information because they were putting a particular agenda and propaganda in place?
If someone has an agenda, no. It would be if people aren't allowed to publish things, or if there was. Did you? Well, there was.
So yeah, as much as I googled it, and a lot of the information I've got in mine here, although my other stuff is much more in detail. Wherever you have a bit of a Google, when you look at censorship and where it was bad and where it was good, like the pros and cons, and I was looking at all the lists. A huge amount of articles out there are around the pre-World War II Nazi Germany era. Specifically talking about, hey, the censorship that was there where people weren't allowed to talk badly about the regime that was going along. And you could imagine this in similar areas where it's dictatorships. Hey, you cannot post about the king being a bad person. That would be, to me, censorship. So there's agenda there to, hey, don't hit on the king. Don't dismiss the idea.
Yeah, that's two separate things. There's propaganda, which is you saying whatever you want and you can spout out whatever. So think of Joseph Goebbels, master crafting particular pieces about Hitler and about the Jews and whatnot, and they're publishing that. That's not censorship. But if you are suppressing other things, so definition, the suppression or prohibition of any parts of books, films, news, etc., that are considered obscene, politically unacceptable, or a threat to security. And I would probably add speech on top of that as well.
So you can, I think you can have censorship where we're trying to protect the people, and hey, then again, there's a viewpoint of perhaps. The viewpoint of Nazi Germany was, hey, we're trying to protect the people here by censoring it.
It always is for a good reason, and good intentions exist. So, for example, a modern one would be not naming a terrorist or a mass murderer. And you see this in the media where it's kind of effective to not actually name who the person is, because one of the motivations that people do these mass killings or killing a whole bunch of people is to get the attention, is to kind of feel like they've got some power. You neglected me all this time, society. Well, I'll fucking show you. You're going to remember my name. And it's if the name is not there, then you're not going to, there's less motivation to do that. Now, that's, I would say, censorship, because you're concealing information that people actually want to know. They want to, because everyone's curious. Who was that guy who killed all those people? So that's one of the ones where it's like good intentions do exist. Does it work though? Does the censorship work? So from my life, just boasting small and big cases, I've said no. Information always seems to leak out, and it's kind of it's like the truth wants to be freed. You hear this all the time, and that's kind of why I think the Twitter logo was a bird, because it's like it's trying to get free. So it seems to me that information and truth leaks out all the time, but then counterfactual, we wouldn't hear about the times that it doesn't get out as well. So think of something like North Korea. There's a lot of censorship going on there, and it's pretty effective. We don't hear much about any of the privations, about any of the starvings, or what is actually going on. That maybe it is actually a utopian paradise. I doubt it, but maybe there is a case to be made that it actually is effective as well. My general thing goes back. You've seen that meme where there was an attempt. You seen that meme before? Okay, no. I'll put one on your screen for. Oh, I can't actually do it for the video, but if you're listening via audio, you'll see there was an attempt meme, and it was like there was an attempt to, and then it was, typically humorous. There was an attempt to sit down, and it's like a drunk guy has fallen through his chair or something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
understand.
That's kind of how I feel about censorship. There was an attempt to, and then it kind of comes out anyway.
Right. So, I mean, ultimately, talking about censorship, where would you fall on the line of, because it always boils down to this. We can talk about it and examples, and the ones that I had, and if you go and look up, basically type it in Google, pros and cons, censorships, you kind of get pulled towards both the pre-era of World War II and then the post-World War II with the Nuremberg trials, where there was censorship also from the Allies in terms of preventing information coming out around Germany so that the Nuremberg trials would go to a certain way, and that was trying to protect the people who were harmed or attacked or particular areas around World War II. So, trying to keep away a lot of the extra ideas that had come out of stories from people that might find that it was just too much, and try to protect them in that ways. So that's how I guess it seemed to be denoted in the websites of pros for censorship and the cons for censorships in those different areas. But I got talking to someone today, in particular to this, because I was asking a few people around the idea, hey, need some topics, what are your thoughts about it? And then they kind of got started, and they were showing me their view around censorship, which was very, very much in the extreme, if you had to pick one, where they said, hey, I believe there should be no censorship. Zero. None at all. That's the best way to approach it. And that got me thinking into, okay, what's my thoughts ultimately at the already very foundational level? So its question for you is, where would the idea of censorship apply for you if you obviously there might be little caveats that everyone can pick at, but as much as you can think, censorship, where does it sit in the theoretical space, and where does it sit in the practical, hey, we live in this world, we're mere mortals, how would censorship actually play out in reality and in its best case scenario?
Okay, so I'm guessing this is a kind of hypothetical, if I could kind of control.
Yeah, so let's imagine, so the theoretical here is, hey, you can start a brand new country, like we've talked about this before. What's your views on censorship? Like that, and you have the ability to really put that into play.
Yeah.
And maybe the second one is the practical, where it's, hey, maybe you're an influential person. What do you do right now about censorship to the existing world?
Yeah, so in the theoretical sense, I'm pretty close to that hardliner extreme, what you would maybe say, where I would probably just say basically all information, not that all information should be accessible to everyone, not that, but if people want to talk about something, there should be no barriers for them to talk about that. And this is kind of getting into, I guess, the idea of how the IPFS works. So the Interplanetary File System, for those who don't know that. And basically that's just a way to try and get digital media to kind of stay online, and make it decentralized, because a lot of this exists on servers. If those servers go down, large portions of things get wiped. And that has this idea of it's persistent but not permanent. So just because there is a piece of information doesn't necessarily mean it has to stay online or accessible to everyone forever. But if it's persistent, if people continually kind of come back to it, then that maybe denotes that it has some value. And so things like the I don't know, white blood count or red blood count, red cells in my body at this particular moment, if that information became available, maybe it could be damaging to me if I cared about that. But it's probably just uninteresting to the vast bulk of everyone, and so that information should go away. But it's kind of getting off censorship a little bit, I guess. I would say theoretically, censorship on almost all cases, it's a bad idea to do it, and then in practicality, it also just creates more harm than it prevents harm.
Yeah. I think the way I thought about it, so again, I'll reset it. So his particular view is, in the practical and the theoretical, was censorship. No need. We should get rid of it completely, and that applies in any facet, every facet that we've seen examples on. But then he gave a caveat, which I was like, oh, okay, there's a caveat there, which was censorship for kids. So you want to censor the amount of things that a kid would see. So again, there's babies, kids, whatever, and that might be snuff films, that might be porn, that might be whatever. Swearing. But there's a couple of lines, so, and you start getting into some grey articles, because then again, it's, okay, well, what age? What is it? Is there an introductory series? Who's making that decision? So when I started thinking about it personally, I went, in the theoretical, yes, I agree that a more free-flowing set of information in a broad speaking sense is good, is better. Go towards that, then less is so. However, if you have that, there is almost a utopia feeling to it, as in, hey, if you have that in its very free-flowing, and we're talking free-flowing across a whole variety of things. You're talking state, you're talking any governance, you're talking a lot of things, which right now maybe are censored by, governments, it's censored by some sort of firewalls, something else, are we referring to nothing, none of that, just be completely free-flowing and available? Okay, well, that might be damaging in a lot of other ways. And in the theoretical, I think in my mind, if you really want to be no censorship at all, and on basically everything apart from a very few caveat of things, in my mind, it almost feels like that's a utopia. That's almost an inconceivable reality that we're not going to get there. Which then makes me look at the practical, and I go, in the end, I think less censorship is better than more censorship. And it's sort of that view, I can't remember who said it, but we'd rather government gets smaller every year, not gets larger every year. Same thing with rules and something else. No, it was I can't remember who it was. It came from a podcast, and I kind of agree with that. But in the practical sense, I just don't know the reality of saying, or the people who come and say, well, no censorship absolutely at all would be fantastic. You touched on, that's a different thing though. So just because someone might want to know some information doesn't mean they have the right to it. So if a kid asks mummy and daddy how a baby's made, where do they come from? I don't think if you tell them something different, that's not the pure anatomical truth, I don't think that's censorship. That's just you choosing not to reveal certain information. No, and that's true. That hiding some information like that in a direct ask might not be. But I guess censorship in particular, there might be, hey, if you're under 18 years of age, you cannot access these websites. Okay, well, that's censorship. Or at least people there's a... I don't think so. You wouldn't say so?
No, those are just rules. There's a rules being put in place by a private company. If they want to restrict certain things, I think that's totally... that's acceptable.
Yeah. So then I guess let's imagine Twitter. Well, YouTube. You post something on YouTube. YouTube takes it down because it's against their whatever policies. Is that, a lot of people talk about it. Hey, they're censoring the conversation of this. Are you suggesting that that's not censorship then?
There's getting into tricky areas where it's kind of duplicitous. They'll say one thing and then do another thing. I'm generally on the sense that if you choose to go to somewhere and it's a private thing, so YouTube is a private company, and you're just accessing their service. If you checked out the one that I did just before this, the episode, I read out some of the terms of services, and it was very clear. If you upload to stuff here, they can do whatever they want with it, and if they feel it's harming YouTube or its users or subsidiaries or something like that, they can take that off.
But that's what I mean, so like the general conversation. So speaking with this individual, a lot of the stuff that I was Googling it. I've been listening, and he kind of recommended, hey, listen to this podcast. It was Joe Rogan with Robert Kennedy Jr. Huge amount of conversations about censorship on that particular podcast. Yes. And the big one, YouTube censoring. They're doing all this censoring. That they're not letting me post this and whatever. But by the way you're defining it, hey, it's a private company. It's their choice. That's not censoring.
Yeah.
And this is where, whether here or there, you can kind of debate that particular, like whether it matters or not. I guess in the end, I go, in the practical sense of censorship, it is very difficult to go to either extreme. It is very difficult to go to either extreme in terms of have super censorship. You're gonna have people rebelling against it for sure, right? You'd hope so. Fingers crossed. If you go the other way towards more sort of a utopia, you're gonna find yourself in absolute all sorts of messes, because then you can get into these conversations about private companies. What do you do about kids? What do you do about things that from a justice perspective are putting people at risk, or people are going to get killed, or people are going to get pillaged? There's dangers in both scenarios, and I kind of go, I feel like a lot of people who say about censorship, you're living in a theoretical world. This is a theoretical ideology, I guess I would say, and I definitely stick to my guns on, hey, if I'm going to be talking philosophy, it's got to be practical philosophy. Okay, the practical philosophy of censorship here in my mind is, it's a little less censored, but just a little. Like, it's not a dramatic change to what we see now. Here's a juicy bit I was going to get into.
Okay.
And it's similar, but it's kind of a little bit off topic. So Karen did a meandering conversation just recently around value,
yes,
podcasting 2.0, and a lot of details. And you talked a lot about the features and the functionalities of what this, it provides.
Yes. Of
this new platform. Now, I will recommend people to go listen to the podcast, because I'm about to wreck on it. I'm going to tear it apart. No, I won't. I actually won't. But I went, as you were saying, a lot of the functions and the features, I went, man, who gives a fuck? Who gives a fuck about these chapters? Who gives a fuck about these things? And I come out and go, I see this viewpoint. This is my viewpoint. I can see, I went, man, Spotify has those chapters.
Juan hates disabled people. You heard it here first. Transcripts for people who have auditory...
Read my lips. You got to read my lips. But then there's a crucial point in that podcast. So again, go listen to the full thing, where it really dawned on me that the key, amongst another thing, but the key thing that I really like about podcasting 2.0, and that's the conversation I had today, was its ability to move away from censorship. And I think sometimes when we say that, now it might not be tied to this, and maybe it's not so much a description, but it's censorship has an almost entangled dance with decentralization and centralization. As in, I think the more centralization you have in a broad scale, the more censorship you might be finding. And that might be because there's private interests or state interests at hand, as opposed to a more decentralized interest. And then it gets kind of spread out. That's one of the aspects around the podcasting 2.0 value for value space that I go, that's what really attracts me. The ability that, look, we don't really talk about things that are pretty risque, but if we did, or if we said something, now I consider that if YouTube was to take down a podcast or episode for whatever reason, I'd go, okay, they're censoring it. They're censoring based on their rules and what they think, but it's censoring because it's not allowing me to speak. But podcasting 2.0 space, and this is what I was trying to describe with someone, it's going to stay there. Like, no one's going to take it down unless someone comes directly to our house and basically gun to our heads, like, hey, get this down. Or some other extreme versions.
There's doable versions where someone listens to it, they complain to Buzzsprout. Mm-hmm. Buzzsprout can kick us off if they want to.
We could move to an even more decentralized model, of course.
And I have done that. I've used Casterpod, so they would have to go to the DigitalOcean server that I hosted it on. That's where they would have to go to. And then I could switch that off. And if I really wanted to, like I was saying, I could get just a cheap, like a laptop or a hardware, some sort of hardware, and I could do it in my house. And that's where it would be. They would have to complain to the energy company to stop providing the energy.
Or internet provider or something like that.
Correct.
But, it was really quite interesting to me that in the podcast, one of the things that I was really interested in, again, it reinforced it, was the ability to almost navigate away from censorship from a private company or from another matter entirely. It's almost very much our choice to have the ability to do that. And I went, cool, this sums up. So I think for me, I can see where I navigate towards a less censorship, but I just fear that people can sometimes dive into the deep end of theoretical versus, what would practically happen if you were to just all of a sudden let people go on, whatever they might think.
Yeah, true. It's funny you found the portion, because if I had to ask a random person on the street, which is more important, having a thing which is censorship resistant or it can offer you these additional benefits, I would have thought they would more and go to, I want more features. I would like to be able to see links and chapters and transcripts, and less caring about like censorship. Why do I care about that?
Yeah, I'm not sure. That's what just really motivated me. Here's another one, an interesting one that I guess from us we are aware of. But again, in the conversation around censorship, I was talking about, podcasts, and they were telling me about, that's why I really like listening to Spotify. They don't censor. And I was like, no. They do censor. Now, they might not censor in the ways that YouTube censors, but I showed them the Adam Curry conversation with Joe Rogan where there was a censor. There was that. And they were like, oh my God, I didn't realize.
They've taken full episodes.
They've taken full episodes as well. There's others that they've removed as well. So now, yes, they're not as heavily censoring as your comparisons of social profiles or other platforms like YouTube, but they can still do that. So I went, hey, and I actually showed them Fountain and what it did, and maybe they'll listen to it in a particular format. So that would be really cool. But it still was interesting to see also what, as an individual out there, there's very different views as to what you think is being censored and non-censored. And this kind of goes back to that original point you said that if there's data that's not released, you don't know about it. How do you even know that it's being censored? I reckon that applies so far to a lot of people. Some really, like some people, and again, just in a conversation, someone was really sharing the fact that, hey, I just think that people think that we're stupid, right? They don't have to censor anything. Let it go free. Let people decide what they need to do. They'll understand. To me, I go, that's bullshit. I think that is expecting humans to be rational, and we're not. We're absolutely emotional. And if you were, there's probably so much info out there, dude, that hasn't been revealed that we just don't know about, that if it was to go out there of some realities of, hey, have dam heights and what the water is or something, I guess we're talking information here. Let's say something that's really registered, like really restricted, or really restricted government things, something else, that if you let loose, okay, most people are going to be understanding of it, but it's going to be an enough of a small selection of individuals who will just use that to some insane, damaging, crazy effect. Who even knows what it might be? But that's not good. Like, that's almost, I'd go, hey, there's a level of benefit to that being censored from the general population. I wouldn't assign myself to say, oh no, it's better to just allow everyone to don't let that be censored at all. Go free and everyone will have the best intent. I go, no, I don't think that's to be the case at all.
Yeah, once again, I don't consider that censorship. I consider that choosing not to reveal certain information. Censorship is when Julian Assange publishes war crimes that the US has committed, and they fucking go after him.
Actually, that's the other reason why you want to talk about censorship was the Panama Papers. No, not the Panama Papers. The papers that got released from the Pentagon, the individual who died.
Pentagon. Yes, sorry. Yes, of course. So Daniel Ellsberg was, I must have missed that in my notes. So Daniel Ellsberg died a couple of days ago, and did he write the book called The Pentagon Papers? I read a book, I think, called The Pentagon Papers, and it was all about him. And basically, he revealed these documents which were showing how the US kind of think tanks that were really related to the military, he showed how they knew it was an unwinnable war. They were stuck into it, and they kind of chose to continue it on. There was no real point to it. It was just really damning documents, and then all this stuff happened where he was getting court orders. He was getting trialed for espionage and for revealing secret documents which shouldn't have been revealed, and all sorts of things happened from that.
Yeah, he precipitated a national political controversy in 1971 when he released the Pentagon Papers. Yeah.
So they were basically documents just showing the US in a very, very unfavorable light, and giving a lot of spark and fuel to the already flames that were going on of the anti-war movement.
Now, would you say that that's censorship?
What they tried to do to him was.
Right.
Yes, definitely. Which was through legal means, through the law, to stop him from, I believe, they were going after publishers as well. So he revealed these documents. A bunch of the rather big newspapers at the time published them. They went after the newspapers. And when I say they, I mean the American government.
And if you had to really pick a side of that fence, let's say as an example, where would you fall in the, hey, I'm supportive of the government, or I'm supportive of the other side of, no, hey, you should let it be free?
It's related to something I care deeply about, which is violence and war. And so I'm naturally inclined to... I'm so biased in terms of anything anti-war that I'm going to side with them. I would probably go, once that information is starting to get out and it has been released, then trying to stop it, I think was futile, and it was futile in the end. But they caused a whole lot of harm, stress, threats to a whole lot of people to try and
I think
suppress that down.
So this comes to one of my favorite words as of late, which is what you ultimately are deciding to be your outcome or your viewpoint or what you're optimizing for. Because I think you could probably paint a picture on either of those side of the fences around what you really should, like what should have been the case here for that particular censorship case. Because absolutely, I can see it in that regard that, if I really had to be pushed, I'd say, okay, I think I'd probably side with let the information flow and see what comes out from that regard. However, if we were retrospectively looking at it and, if for some reason the information that gets out that was being shared, like they knew what was coming out, was going to put more lives in danger than currently were, that particular paradox of, hey, currently... There's a
whole bunch of undercover spies in another country.
Something to that effect. Like say right now, there's all this information that's going to
away those.
So there's all this information that's going to get leaked out from obviously what's happening in the Vietnam War and everything that should be or shouldn't be happening, and you don't want to release that because a lot of people are stake, and there's the whole, at least from the USA and probably the world, who was looking into that and being like, well, we don't want to be seen in a bad light. But what are the other information that was going to be released as part of this whole thing? As you say, put then. Not just these, I'm just going to put a number, 10 million people. It's now, hey, 100 million people are going to be put into this bad position. Does that change the view of censorship here for you?
No.
Right. And it doesn't because why?
I don't think it practically works. I don't think no matter how...
So no matter how much worse the revealing or the uncovering or like removing the censorship is, it's still the...
I'm just trying to think what the revealing would, because if it's going to affect 100 million people, there's a decent chance it'll affect you. That's a 1% chance.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, so like
so that information is vital to you. Then, if that's the case, if it's so damaging that it will affect everyone, doesn't everyone then get a say in it? I guess.
Yeah, I guess let's say, and again, the specifics here don't matter because it's a little bit of an extreme example. But if that one had caused a civil unrest and then a civil war, which it wasn't 300 something million people in America then, maybe less. But all of a sudden it turns into absolute chaos, importation, businesses fall apart. It goes back to like hunter-gatherer level modes. Everyone's in the shit. Is that still the better deal?
That's a lot of ifs.
True.
Yeah.
But see, and this is, it is a lot of ifs, but when people put the gun, and there's some people who have like talked about this, they're like, no matter what, no censorship is better. And you could put a lot of if statements here to say, well, if all of this happens, I don't think that it is. And so that's why I still remain with, there's got to be some level of censorship. But in this particular example, I could see myself siding with no. You could very much make a move towards, well, we know the information at the time. This is probably the better. Can you say that of forward-facing censorship moments or pivotal things? I don't know. I don't know if you can effectively do that all the time. I'm sure we can do it most of the time, but not all the time.
I've got some thoughts on this, which I think might clarify it, but should we go to the Boostagram Lounge?
Yes, I think we should.
All right. So the Boostagram Lounge, for those who are wondering what that is, this is the opportunity that we take every week to thank supporters of the show who have been supporting us in a monetary sense, because it does cost a fair bit of money to keep the cameras rolling, to uploading the audio, to getting all this stuff. And it feels nice to be compensated for our energy and effort. So this is where people who are using one of those new podcasting apps have sent in a message with some Satoshis attached to it. So Juan, what have we
Correct. And we got a couple. We got a couple this week. So again, the trusty Dave Jones with the weekly boost for the Mere Motherline Nation.
Classic.
12,112 sats using Cron.
Big rush.
He doesn't even change it as well. Bitcoin's going up. He doesn't change it. I love it. So Dave, again, always very much appreciated. We've got one here from 1G. Karen is changing month by month on this. 300 sat using Fountain.
Yeah, what do you mean by that?
That was in relation to... I can't remember now exactly what I boosted it on. But it was one of your ideas, I believe, that you kept changing your mind on or something like that.
No, science, maybe?
It was on the... I think it was the approaching. It was on approaching, and I was like, I can see that this is... Some of the conversations around this is changing month by month.
By month's a bit harsh. On a
maybe half-yearly basis. So that was some sats sent through that way on that regard.
Thank you, Juan.
We've got one from Bun. This is my first time listening to your podcast since hearing about it from JB. I appreciate the informative episode. 5,000 sats sent using Podverse.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you, Bun. That's the kind of stuff that lifts me up.
Yep.
Like a new listener coming in.
And sending through a boost as well.
Sending through a boost. That's really,
we
really
like
awesome.
it. Bun, thank you very much.
Much
appreciated. Petar makes a showing. Wow. I would recommend all podcasters out there direct anyone with questions about podcasting 2.0 to this episode. Great review. Karen, 2,222 sats sent using Fountain. Row of ducks.
Oh, thank you, Peter.
They're from Fountain. Thank you very much, Peter. Indeed, if you want to go check out, that's the meanderings that Karen did just before this one.
Yeah,
check that out.
I've listened to it twice now. Once when I was editing it, and once just after I've released it, and I was kind of going, "This is reasonably good." One of the things you can actually tell with it is when I have notes, I stick to them pretty well, and I don't actually have a lot of the problems with the the whatnots. And I was kind of counting them, and I went, there wasn't actually that many.
There wasn't a lot.
Which there was.
Oh, right.
No, I'm asking, was there?
Oh, no, not as much as I heard.
I didn't think there was that much compared to an off the cuff. And it would be when I talk about something off the cuff. I was talking about the family podcast and how I wanted one of their shirts. I think in that 1 minute story, when there was when they came out. Bunch. Yeah. So it's funny. It's funny seeing that. But yes, thank you, Peter. I did. That was 2 years of solid effort and thought going into it.
Absolutely. And we got a couple more of people boosting through specifically on that one as well because people were liking it out there. Cole McCormick, what a blessing it is to see this Valley opportunity so early. The music coming into play is the strongest aspect of the future of V4V. The power of lighting in the palm of our hands. 5,492 sound said using Fountain.
Cole's so funny, man. I love him. He's got he's one where he's so hype. He's just an absolute hype man. From the very first episode of his I listened to, I went, man, this guy's not going to last. He's got too much energy, and he's up to
maintained
70 something now. So yeah, incredible, awesome.
Kudos, Cole, for keeping it going.
America Plus is his podcast.
And finally, here we got McIntosh. Great episode and content, Karen. I'll point people here quite regularly to explain V4V. Go podcasting. McIntosh from Genetic and Bitcoin.
Generation Bitcoin. I made a little fun of him for
10,000 sats sent using Fountain. So a big one there, awesome. McIntosh. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, mate. And that's a whole bunch of people tuning into the show.
Absolutely.
And showing some support, and that helps to feed us. Helps to feed us some sats, to allow me to keep boosting other shows, to continue the kind of circular economy going on. So really, really, really cool. Anyone who wants to know more about that, go to meremortalspodcast.com/support, and you can find the best info there to know more about that. Censorship one. So I think this will help us.
Okay.
Soft versus hard forms of censorship. I think this will actually be able to maybe enlighten us and deviate us away from when we're talking about information just not getting released versus actual censorship, the stopping of it.
Okay.
So I kind of went through a list here of, I think, 4 rough forms that you get through. So the hardest of the hard, physical, death and imprisonment. I think that's pretty obvious. If you're killing someone, you're censoring whatever they're trying to say, and releasing that. I think that's probably the hardest. Imprisonment is right after that. threats. So specifically those done with an ill intent to stop someone rather than protect. So this would be if you had a work colleague, you saw them having sex or something, and they knew about it, and then they're starting to physically threaten you, say like, do not tell her wife, do not tell his wife. This is then also getting onto not just physical threats, but if they were your boss, if you say anything, I'm going to fire you. So it's kind of those, there's the malintent related to it. I think that's kind of the next level. Other than that, we get down into the explicit. So this is probably more contracts and agreements, non-disclosure agreements, rules. So this would be YouTube and just general laws that are on the books. So yelling fire into a crowded theater, is that censorship by not being able to say that? And if someone tries to stop you saying that, is that censorship? Kind of. Yeah. And then probably the most common is the implicit. So this is usually self-censorship from social pressure, probably the softest form and the most common. So I think it's easiest to correct though as well. And yeah, what are there any, have any of those actually applied to you? First of all, have you ever felt any of those actual physical threats, explicit? Probably for you the explicit, because you've had plenty of things where you've had to sign non-disclosure agreements and going into higher levels of public service. There's been things that you can't say, right? But I guess you've never tested it, have you? You've never actually tried to spill some. You want to spill some of the dirty secrets right now, Juan? what's the ATO up to?
But it's saying that there is censorship that's attributed to this. So for sure, I've experienced it, but never have I guess we're not talking about it here distinctly, but I've never thought it to be a bad thing. I've always thought it to be, say, the censorship levels there in what might be, I guess, legally or contractually binding to be good. Like, I understand them, to say that, oh no, there shouldn't be censorship around that. I go, no, I can see how people could get real shifty and you could do some shady stuff here if you were not to censor that. So I almost get fully back at it. I go, yep, this is absolutely totally fine. I'm happy to see that censorship. I've never really been truly censored at the social space. I guess I never put enough content out there that is pushing the boundaries. I'm not Jordan Peterson-esque / Theo Von getting his podcast knocked down in a couple of episodes and stuff like that. Like, I don't think you're either in that same boat.
I've put a swear word in one or two of our titles before, and I think they've been taken from YouTube. That's probably the closest to anything I've personally experienced. And I think there is a big difference between when I was with Rio Tinto. I'm pretty sure they made me, when I was first joining the company, I had to go through training and whatnot. Everyone does that. And I'm pretty sure in some of those it said, you're not allowed to reveal this information about how much coal was being produced or sensitive information. And it didn't even really say what was sensitive or not. You had to kind of guess. I never felt that was censoring me because I had no desire to say
share it
how
anyways.
much coal was being produced. Does anyone care? Maybe, probably not. And
I could think of ways of why it would be beneficial to share that.
I never got to a high level to know about the real finances of what was going on at Hale Creek. Maybe someone, if they knew about how much coal was coming out from the mine per year, or if there was any problems coming up with coal releases, maybe that's. But yeah, I've never had the desire to, and then also I've never had any repercussions for that. It's always been for me kind of the self-censorship of maybe I shouldn't tell this joke in this particular scenario, and which is, I think it's censorship, because I wanted to tell the joke, but it also was, okay, maybe I shouldn't do that.
Well, and this comes to the also, talking through those things, there's also the self-censorship. So you can have the censorship which is driven by a larger entity, an entity made up of multiple individuals or multiple entities or groups or company structures or whatever you have. But there is self-censorship that we, in some parts or form, do, whether we think that's the right thing or we are influenced by the biases or information
we hold
that we
tongue
have.
all the time. Yeah,
that happens all the time. when do you think that people who talk about censorship and go, hey, no, there shouldn't be any censorship, do you think that it applies also to self-censorship as well?
I think they're not thinking about it that deeply, to be honest. I think it's real easy to see the obvious ones. This journalist got jailed, Julian Assange, or this person had death threats against them because they spoke out on this particular topic. Any number of the Afghani women who were talking about the regime that was going on against the Taliban. Yeah, sure, they had death threats all the time. So those are the real obvious ones. In the West, it's because we don't have typically that level, unless you're Julian Assange or Edward Snowden, for example. Although his case, I think, is slightly different. I'm not exactly sure I would call his censorship because he did break laws. So it was... Then they'd say, oh, Julian Assange broke laws, but it's American laws and he's an Australian. So, in those cases, I think most people, when they talk about it, they don't look at the harder, the more difficult to grasp. And also, I would also say not as bad, or it's kind of necessary for the social functioning. This is where, for the explicit ones, laws, if you sign up to something, if you sign up to YouTube and then they start kicking you off, I think that's kind of like, well, duh, it's written in there, they're going to do that. And if you're doing it to yourself, I think that's okay. You're kind of making judgment calls at the moment. It's when it's kind of particularly the threats and then the physical violence. That's where it's really, really obvious for me.
Sure.
Yeah.
So where do you land, or what's the prickliest prickle of censorships that really does your head in? Not the ones that are extreme, but the ones that you really go, hey, this really shouldn't be here at all. I don't really believe in the censorship of this model or this state or whatever it may be. If there was one.
Yeah, I'd have to come back to that. There's nothing probably in those in-between zones where it is sort of a law, but also it is a threat, and it's kind of in between those. So if you look at someone like Craig Wright, so he's the guy, Australian guy, who claims he is the inventor of Bitcoin. He claims he's Satoshi Nakamoto. There have been other people who have said, no, that's wrong. And then they've also thrown some swear words and some slander on top of him. He's pretty notorious for going after people for libel. This is where he's kind of trying to censor them by punishing them financially in a way. That for me is kind of a gray zone tending towards that's kind of gross.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And then the clear-cut black and white ones I think are things like Julian Assange, like people getting thrown, political dissidents being thrown off helicopters and put in jail forever and that sort of thing. Yeah, that's the more obvious ones.
Yeah, I think the one that almost it's a prickliest prickle for me, not because of an extreme, but because I still probably don't know how the censorship really, like what the solution is, nor how you have this conversation. So again, throwing it back to that Joe Rogan, Robert Kennedy Jr. episode, they were talking about.
Have you watched it out of interest?
I'm about 2 hours in, or 3 hours.
I'm not going to watch it.
Look, I wouldn't. There's a lot. It's very American based. It's very politically based. In fact, although the first 40 minutes was about, the COVID vaccines and vaccines in general. Now,
if there's anything, I think there might be something I hate more than politics, which is COVID.
Look, maybe. And so, and again, so in that conversation, Joe let him sort of run and talking about vaccines and the issues with vaccines and a handful of information and aluminium and mercury poisoning. And, there's this. But a lot of the time, here's the trouble that I have with most other platforms around this. So Robert Kennedy Jr. was allowed to just kind of go on and have this big speech about it. And you can say whatever you want to say and whatever you sit on the particular idea of vaccines are good, vaccines are bad, vaccines did this to my person, vaccine did that. But to hear someone just present it and then and this is where I side with what I was talking to a mate about, is that, look, if you're thinking it through enough and you're listening to it, you can make your own decisions about it. So I listened to it and I went, I can see some of the aspects where, well, okay, it makes sense. You're pointing to the data. Others, I can make up my mind and go, hey, you're starting to just like melt into the pot together, all these various things. Now you're starting to just throw in, it's this, and in 1991 this increased, and it was all these things happened. Like, wait a minute, wait. You're throwing in everything plus the baby into this area. What's going on? Like that is not scientific enough for me. This is going all over the place, and so you can make that decision yourself as long as all the information is presented. But the prickliest prick that I have is whether it's self, whether it's in group, whether it's in the status, whether it's in government state, where you can't have an open conversation about something that isn't to the extreme level of justice. No, I don't think you should have a conversation openly, really anywhere about how best to kill a human. Yep. We can probably all agree that that's probably not a conversation that needs to be having. Fine, censor it as much as possible. Get rid of people who are talking about that.
Well, that's the thing is, does that even need censoring, or do people just not care? They just go, I don't want to hear about that.
No, I think people definitely discuss about that sort of stuff. I remember way back in the day, back when Silk Road was still a thing, and people were using torrents, Onion Tor to go through the dark web and stuff. There was blogs out there that people were using to have those conversations, hire hitman and stuff like that. Dude, that was rampaging. That happened. There was people using that. So I could see that people would want to have those conversations. And I'd say, no, cool, censor that, try to protect people from it. It's probably not something that we want to go down the path of. But the ones where you go, okay, let's have an open conversation about vaccines. Let's have an open conversation about COVID. Let's have an open conversation about abortion. Let's have all of these things where, for the most part, not all the time, for the most part, you're going to find some extreme conversations in either side of the camp. And there's not enough, and I think it's because of censorship that allows everyone to almost hear the information and find the general consensus of a topic, where I go, hey, there's some topics out there that you're just not allowed to have that decision conversation. Again, we can point to COVID with things of, hey, there was, do you call it censorship when you couldn't go to a pub if you didn't have the vaccine, right? I guess that's censorship in a hard way. So, there's those applications where those aspects, I'd rather, can we have more of the information? Can we make our own decision? A little bit more freedom in that regard, whether it's the physical freedom, whether it's the voice freedom. I go, I don't know where I land and wherever you want to. You're almost like, hey, be prepared for the consequences, but allow people to make the choice of the consequences they make, not almost make the choice for them in conversations that can be had. I guess I would put it that way. Once
again, I'm pretty much a free speech absolutist, so that hypothetical you had about guys talking about killing someone or murdering, I think they should be allowed to have that. And it's when they start taking action on that, that's when it's you probably, if they're having that conversation, I think that's good to have out in the open so that the 3-letter agencies can be looking at them really minutely and going, brother, if you step outside your house with a wad of cash, I'm going to follow you, sort of deal. Yeah. So I'm typically more, because it's always, where do you pull the boundary point with especially with free speech? It's always, where do you do it? Is it this thing? Is it this thing? And it's very hard. That's one of the ones where I'm more, if they want to have that conversation, they can. Getting to kind of free speech and free speech markets aren't free. So that's one of the things this book was talking about, Merchants of Doubt. And it was saying how it's talking about how when the markets fail. So basically, when you have the industry of aerosols and stuff, and they're using chlorofluorocarbons, CFCs, a lot of that stuff gets up into the atmosphere, destroys the ozone, or when I say destroys the ozone, it kind of interacts with it and leaves a hole in it, particularly around the Antarctic. And the science was like really settled on this, and this was one of the ones where you go, the free market, it's not working because it's something bad is happening, but it's negative externalities. It's socializing the costs, so they're not paying for it, and this is where you need regulation to come in and things like this. This is kind of where it's with the free speech market as well. So it's that debate on the public square versus a private company. So we kind of touched on this. The problem is that they're very blurry. So if you've seen any of the things related to Facebook, that they had a kind of pretty close ties with a lot of the 3-letter agency companies. Twitter, a lot of the Twitter files that came out, they were also allowing the FBI and CIA access into like the back end and things like that. This is where I think the argument that YouTube censoring is kind of a valid one, because they're the only place that you can go to, because the government has kind of propped them up, maybe. So if you were, let's take a real modern one we're watching live, Sam Altman. So was he CEO? I don't know, of OpenAI. I mean, it was open source, so I don't think open source has a CEO.
I think he is CEO.
It was open source, turned it into a private company. Then, once they have ChatGPT, very successful product, hits the market, a lot of people start using it. Now he's starting to say to the government, we need regulation. AI is bad. We've let it loose. It's going to do all these bad things. You saw what happened to social media. You have no control over that. And he's kind of been saying that to Congress a lot. If that strategy works and then they regulate AI and now there's only 2 or 3 companies you can go to use AI, and then they start censoring a lot of the things that is being output from that, whether it be political speech, whether it be, once again, if I ask it how to kill someone and it tells me it, I don't think that necessarily means I want to kill someone. I just want to know about it. And then I'm okay if the government, if I get put on a watch list because of that.
Yeah,
it's a toughie, mate.
I think the bit I struggle with there is, again, it's theory. It's okay. Well, people are finding this information. Again, it's information, but if it's providing that information where before it was censored, but now it's applied, in theory, it's kind of okay as long as people don't act. But in the practical aspect, people do act. Like, there is a non-zero chance that people will act given that information. Same thing as if you release the information of knowing how to create a bomb. There's probably a greater than zero chance that will actually happen. So then it's the question of, is the benefit of someone acting upon that information better than it being censored in the first place? And that's where you can have a really big debate.
Would they have done anything anyway?
But it ultimately lands on, I think, even beyond that, it's, yes, but who are you optimizing for? Because if you want to look at it from a regulatory state, large power, whatever you call it, yes, it benefits them. That censorship should be applied because they can make the call as to why it's beneficial. But you look at it again from an individual perspective, or someone who wants to know the information and doesn't want to be respected, they'll go, no. In my viewpoint, you need to optimize to have full transparency for people. And so, undoubtedly, I kind of fall into both pictures that, can you really have a one sole answer? No, globally. Yes, specifically. You're giving a specific answer. I'm giving a specific answer. Most media models are going to give you maybe a variation of it. I don't think we can truthfully say that as a humanity there's a single one answer. No, because you have such varying levels and degrees of play that I think it plays out in some ways in a better way, and sometimes it might not play out in a better way. Even if we got down to the absolute pure numbers, maybe a little bit different from censorship, but things like there was a lot of Tesla cars in the news for the last couple of weeks, I think, because, oh my God, all these crashes that are happening and people dying. And Elon Musk sort of coming out and saying, well, yes, but statistically there's less death now on the car. But people don't give a shit about that, right? You're looking at the numbers, there's death, this happened, this equates to this, that's bad. But if you look at the true numbers, it's better. But a lot of people, again, I'm saying it, we're not rational human beings, we're emotional human beings to the core. You're not going to think that, you're just going to see it in this way. So I think ultimately I have to fall into, yes, probably in a statistical, rational way. It's probably, maybe overall better if we go with, no censorship. But I think emotionally, as humans, we can't handle the truth.
So in that, I disagree with that really, really strongly. So in that case, should those numbers of people dying in Tesla cars, should that be censored?
No, absolutely not. No, they should be open. And that's where I go, the reality is censoring should be less. I agree with that. We should move towards. But the reality is that people are going to react in probably a less rational way than we imagine them to. Not like everyone, but for sure. Like you and me probably looked at that and we're looking at it rationally and go, okay, we can get that idea. But there's absolutely some people who are going to see that and not see it rationally. Hell, they might see that and go, shit, I need to make it my life's mission. I would go blow up all Tesla cars because they're bad. They're bad for humanity. Right? So, where do you draw the boundary in some of these things? Again, those are some extremes for sure. I just don't know whether, like, in a lot of the conversations that we have in some of these topics, I'm moving more towards, and I think you talked about this ages ago. I can't be final with a couple of views on, this is exactly my view on censorship. But ultimately, I go a little bit less than what we have currently, always, and maybe let's pull back until, we have an issue, and then we kind of pull it and then we move it back. But always trying to take a little bit less, because I think that helps humanity in general to be more informed and put more of the decision into the human hands as opposed perhaps from the government or the state or the powers at play. But I think pulling the rug underneath everyone and just removing all censorship altogether, the ensuing chaos that would happen in humanity, I think would just be so absurd that you couldn't just go and do that.
Yeah. I would kind of say I do think everyone that we can handle the truth. I actually do think that's not a great argument. But
maybe another way I'll describe it. If tomorrow I woke up and there was no censorship in the world, it would not be a fun world to be in that day. That would be I could just expect some sort of calamity or craziness to ensue on that particular day. Maybe not me personally, but from a net global perspective, I think removing every single level of censorship, you'd be in for a bad day.
Yeah,
that would be like my view of what would happen the next day.
I'm just trying to imagine what that would be like. I don't see how it would devolve into total chaos. I could see some bad things happening, but I'm not sure the world would blow up. But
not blow up, but I'd say net negative.
In any case, like freedom isn't free, I think is one of the things I was going to get at, which was the Dharma app. Is that censorship and is it bad? I would probably say it's not censorship in one sense, which is Apple has rules. You broke those rules, so they get to kick you off. So in that case, it's censorship that you agreed to. So, and in that case, well, you shouldn't have broke the rules. But in another sense, it kind of is. So therefore, I'd rather just invest my time in uncensorable things, and that's a good thing about Nostr and the way it's built. Fine, I won't use Dharmas. I'll go to Amethyst or Astral or Snort. There's a whole bunch of ways you can get into it if you want to. So that's kind of one of the ones where it's, I guess you could technically say it's censorship because they are obstructing people being able to like release information, or maybe not. It's an app. I don't know if yeah. It's one where people would maybe say, especially if they were using it, we're getting censored. But then it's kind of like, yeah, but you're using the right thing. Nostr's the right place to be if you don't want censorship, because now you can just go into one of the other clients and it's all going to be good. All fine and dandy. So yeah, in summary, once again, I'm almost a hardliner in the sense of doing all I can do, everything I can do to avoid it for myself. So if I feel that advertising is encroaching in, or if I feel that we take advertising, I think we'd encounter censorship of some form there. Whether them be saying, the advertiser saying, don't talk about this, Kyron and Juan, or us preempting that and going, oh, we probably shouldn't talk about that. This would be a bad look for them, and we're taking their money. And this is also why I care less about YouTube by a large margin. If we got kicked off YouTube, I actually wouldn't. I'd be annoyed, but I wouldn't be devastated. If the podcast got taken off, and that was being censored, that's where I would have I'd have real problems. I'd be like, I've fucking done something wrong to allow myself to get into this situation.
Get to that level.
So practicality is also my main sticking point. So they censored Julian Assange. If that's not an example of an abuse of the human rights and censorship, at least in the Western context, I don't know what is. So in that case, I just feel like, yeah, censorship has that had good benefits for the US, for Julian Assange, for the world? Once again, it's hypotheticals and it's hard to measure. I would say probably no, but
there'll be some people who have benefit of it.
And then, so what are we going to do about it, Juan? Been talking about censorship for bloody ages. I think we keep doing what we're doing. I feel that podcasting is probably the closest way you can get to pure, if you want to broadcast your thoughts, other than just going out and speak in the street. Basically, everyone can do that. But if you want to broadcast your thoughts, I think podcasting is the best way to avoid censorship. And 20 years ago, that was probably blogging because podcasting didn't exist. 40 years ago, maybe it was pamphlets. Maybe it was going to your local meetups and doing it in person. 60 years, who knows? Or 40 years ago, maybe it was radio. I think 20 years time, it probably will have changed. It might not be podcasting. And then that's the case. That's kind of where I want to be at. I feel like I would want to play the games where you can't be censored, even if I don't think it will really apply to me. I've learned a lot from people like Rushvi and seeing how he got censored, from Julian Assange, there's a whole bunch of things where I go, I'd rather not put myself in the shoes where that could happen to me.
Yep, I totally agree. I think the practicality aspect of it is true. I guess I'd lean towards not having to be at the extremity of getting rid of it completely, but to be able to at least self-manage choices.
We don't need to have self-managed hardware here to do it.
No.
But having the option and knowing how to do it, I kind of know how to do it now. Yeah, okay. That's a good thing to do.
Yeah, but also, and it depends on from an individual, for me and Mortalize listening to this, of from an individual person to move beyond the perceived censorships as well. So I can tell you right now, the way that I spoke and talked with bosses and interacted with humans when I very first started the workforce to what I do today is very different, and I definitely don't censor myself as much anymore. If I'm going to swear, I swear. If I'm going to tell the truth of what an issue is, I am. I'm not censoring that, nor am I censoring things that are important across from other channels. And this plays out. Now, there is the realities that to be in those positions, you also have to be in certain comfortable levels in other areas of your life to be able to do that. That also applies to, extrapolate that to other entities. You have to be at a certain comfortable level to be able to almost deviate away from some censorship states. If you are in the extreme or in dire needs, there might have to be a play of censorship, because otherwise you just get keeled off the cliff and off you go. Like, that's it. It explodes. Take not the Julian Assange example, but something else with a particular country. And if there's one person releases this information, your country's toast or currency's gone, you're fucked. You fucked everyone in this country. Okay. You might have to take the pill and censor this motherfucker so that doesn't destroy the country. Or...
I disagree with that. Yeah.
But this is the thing, right? And so you can fall on the conversation. And again...
I don't think it works. That's my problem.
Yeah, I
the
think...
practicality aspect, I don't think it works.
Yeah, so this is like the observable entity that as a country who's in... a country or a state or an entity that's in need or in dire straits, because if this person releases information... our valuation of the company's gone, the valuation of our currency's gone, or something like that. I can see why, from their perspective, censorship is important. Overall, is it the right thing? No, it's not the right thing. But is it the best thing for them? Fucking absolutely. Depends on who you're looking at it. You want to look at same thing with wars, right? To the winners go the spoils. If we're equally, if you were in the time frame, if you were in the position, if you were German at that time, in Nazi Germany, you probably have a different viewpoint of how that war ended up going in those specific scenarios and what censorship looked like from your perspective, right? So perspectives change a whole load of things. We can only call out what our viewpoint is for us. For us, we think that that's probably the best thing. Someone made this particular quote and saying, you'd be a fool to think that under some extreme levels of power and pressure that you might not act in these ways, right? It's the whole thing that we've got a little bit of Nietzsche quote of
Solzhenitsyn.
Yeah, Solzhenitsyn. There's
the line that divides the
truth and evil.
The line that divides good and evil runs like between heart of every human.
Something like that. Which I think we got pretty close. But in any case, there's a reality that also put into some positions. Like we're talking about this and we say, hey, I don't think that's right. I'd say more than 50% of people, and I don't know if it'd be the case for me. It might be the case for me in one lights, probably be the case for me, that if I was in such a position at the other side and had to make the call, maybe I would say, hey, shit, censor the motherfucker. We're not keeping this shit. Like, I believe it truly. That might be the reality. And we come from it thinking that, this is so nice and easy. We have to do it this way until the pressure's on from another perspective. And you go, hey, maybe they're telling me I've got to do this, or they're going to, club my kid's head. Okay, I'm doing it. That's the better thing. So there's values which sometimes maybe we don't even see. We don't even see the full picture of the equation that's going on. Yeah. So maybe that influences.
There's a hard one because there's a lot of hypotheticals. And here's just another example. So there have been a couple of clips where my natural tendency was, I want to say someone talking out their ass or talking bullshit. And I thought, if I label it that, it's just going to get taken down. So there's no point labeling it that way. I'll just say someone talking BS instead. I know that won't get cut. That was an active choice on my part to censor myself, censor my own speech, censor my own clips. And I did it. And I did it knowingly, willingly, and I went, yeah, okay. I'm not that big a fan of it, but whatever.
George Orwell would not be happy with this kind.
He'd be furious. But then I go, okay, that might be the case in that one particular instance. Once again, does it matter? Does anyone care? No, not really. But if I was doing that 6 times a day, and also on the YouTube, I was making very sure not to talk about the words that shouldn't be said. Suicide, that's a big one. I hear it every time a YouTuber doesn't use it. It just blares in my mind. I'm like, what the fuck?
Why are you moving around the topic?
So when it comes to censoring my own speech like that, especially particular words, that's where I go. I would be a bit more concerned. But I think we all do it implicitly, and you probably just don't even realize it.
True.
You're not saying certain things at certain times because of reasons, and I think that's stopping your own speech. Yeah. So is it a big deal? Nah.
You decide to immortalize.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a good ending point. So thank you everyone for joining to the end here. This is a tricky topic, this one. It was definitely one where there's no, even though I feel like I'm a hardliner in some certain cases, it's also, even just in talking about it, is like, that's difficult. It's difficult to explain. So there's a value for value podcast. To avoid censorship, we just ask that you give value to us, because we will not take any advertising money, nor sponsorships, nor do paywalls or anything like that. All of this information is free for you to access in the most uncensored form possible via the audio. It's also on YouTube, so yeah, check it out there as well. And we just ask that you return that value back in time, talent, or treasure. So there's many ways you could do this. You could do this by sharing this episode to a close friend, or you could, if you are a censorship expert, if you are someone who maybe works in guidelines and policies and has real hand account of this, working at Patreon, and you have to censor people, I would love to hear from someone like that. That'd be super cool. So love to hear some of your talent, some of your thoughts on that. And then you can also, if you want to, support us financially. And we do encourage that, because it does help to keep the show running. Without your support, the show will go away. So we just ask that you do that through a new podcasting app. So go to new podcast apps or podcastapps.com and choose one of the ones from there. I've personally used Fountain and Podverse a lot. Those are probably my 2 favorite at the moment. But there's a whole suite there that you can choose from. We read out all those messages that we get via those apps every Wednesday when we go live.
Correct. So, sometimes we'll read the ones that are streaming as well, because you can stream through Ransom into a Boostagram, but all of that is definitely appreciated as well. Cool. We're going to leave it there. Me and Moralizers, thank you very much for tuning in. Thank you for checking in the musings today all around censorship. So stay uncensored, folks. And for now, take care. One out.
Karen out.
Go. Beep.
Can't stop me.
Beep. Good.
All right. Thank you, Patricia, for joining all the way to the end. I will be stopping these things. As usual, I'll kind of be on the Discord today. Yeah, I'll be on the Discord for a little bit. So if you feel like saying hi, come join me there. And yeah, peace.
Peace.